Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Discovering Commercial Real Estate podcast. With us today, Stephen Jemal, Managing Director of Originations at S3 Capital. Stephen, pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we jump into the business, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into lending.
Sure. Well, for me, it wasn't about lending. It was always about real estate. I look at myself as a real estate guy first, uh, lender, banker second. My uncle and grandfather are in the grocery anchored shopping business, and they really taught me the ropes. I remember when I was in high school and early years of college, I used to sit in their office for hours at a time and just shadow them just to learn the trade. And they taught me a lot of the ABCs and ins and outs. So that's what really wanted like, that's what really got me into real estate. I graduated college in 2016, got my first internship in 2015, and that was a time where HVCRE was really influencing the space. Cap rates were starting to compress as well, and I think a lot of guys who were eventually in equity buying property, they pivoted into lending in order to hedge their basis and make some yield. So I think the lending position, 2015, 2016, it was there was a lot of positions for like lenders rather than guys that were buying properties. So I think it might have been just the times.
Tell us about your first interaction in the real estate business.
Sure. So my first internship in the business was at Cohen Equities. I was interning for Mayor Cohen and Teddy Chatta, and I remember my uncle put me in touch with Teddy Chatta, and I asked him for an internship, and they physically didn't have a computer in the office for me or a desk, and I followed up probably 50 times, and I remember just calling him one day out of the blue, and I said, "I have the solution. I'm bringing a laptop, and I'll bring a desk." And after that, he let me in. He said, "Sure, fine." So I showed up there. I brought my goods, and I remember I was sitting down with him and Mayor for the first time, and we're just sitting, and they're telling me about the job, and then all of a sudden, I remember this is my favorite story because I remember Mayor reaching down, and he takes the garbage and he, hands it to me over the table. And this is as he's telling me about the job, like what I'm going to be doing for him. And he hands me the garbage, and all I thought was, this is great. I could definitely do this. So I grabbed the garbage, and he's still holding on to it. And I just remember holding it, and he's holding it. I'm like, I could take this out for you if you want. And he goes, no. He goes, spit out your gum. So that was like the first interaction in the business that I remember, and that internship was great. They basically they took me around like the southeast. We were visiting all their shopping centers. They were teaching me how to like analyze some of their acquisitions, and this is to me this is so funny because it's like when I first started out, I really didn't know my head from my toes, and they wanted me to go on this like road trip with them, and in hindsight, I realized they really wanted me to be the driver, but I was such a bad driver that after taking the wheel for 4 minutes, they sent me back to the back seat, and the other intern drove for the whole road trip. So that was my first interaction in the business.
Do you feel like when you were younger, any skills that you didn't purposely work on but translated for you today?
Absolutely. So I was an avid tennis player always growing up. Played in high school. I played in college, and I also taught a lot of tennis when I was sort of finishing high school and early years of college. I remember I would teach for 12 hours a day, and the sun was blaring. So I think for me, it was just persistence, hard work, and I think it's the same thing when you're trying to originate loans or trying to do deals. You just got to keep on going. So that was like a marathon in the sun. Now it's a marathon in a nice office with air condition and coffee. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm a huge tennis fan too. Um, and then when you joined S3, can you tell us a little bit more about what S3 is and what your specific role there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have multiple credit funds. We have a business for smaller balance loans that are between 1 million and 20 million, primarily throughout New York, New Jersey, South Florida, and Dallas. And we have a larger balance business for loans that are from 20 million to north of 300 million. And that's really geographically from, call it anything east of Texas. So draw a line through the west side of Texas and just go east. And that's, geographically where we'll lend on the larger balance side. And we really specialize in transitional debt. be it ground up construction, land, bridge, conversion deals, retrofits. That's really our forte. What was the second part of that question?
Specific your role is there?
And I'm really on the origination, structuring, production side of the business. So structuring the deals, negotiating the deals, working through the capital stack, um, signing them up, and along with the team, of course, taking them to the finish line.
So when you first see a deal, what's kind of like the initial start point of something that you'd want to dive in deeper or something where it's automatic stop?
Yeah, I always start with geography. Where is it? I want to make sure it's in my just areas, right? If it's in California right now, it's probably not a fit. That's number one. I kind of then dive into the asset class. We're housing centric, be it multifamily or residential condos. We'll also look at some industrial deals. So I want to make sure that's sort of like my phase two. Phase three is understanding the story behind the deal and the timeline. And then, of course, the sponsorship. Because if one through three doesn't work, the deal definitely is, not for us. Sponsorship sometimes a bit nuanced. People bring in partners. So I like always understand, the deal first.
How much does asset class or like, how much you like the collateral versus the ownership matter to you? Like, how's it weighed?
50-50. I think you could have a really, really, yeah, you could have amazing collateral with, the wrong sponsors and the deal goes terribly sour, right? And you could also have a deal where you don't really love the location, but you have incredible sponsorship and the deal goes great. So to me, it's an even trade.
Fair. And are there any like asset classes, asset types that you guys are really diving into now?
I think right now what we're seeing is a lot more condo deals than rental deals. And I think that's because rates are still high and people could still pencil condos a bit easier than rental deals. Not to say that there aren't rental deals out there and that we're not doing them. I just think that condo deals, especially like throughout the Southeast, we're just seeing a lot more of them and they just seem to pencil a bit better. But that's really what I've been seeing, like, mostly in the market. And that's what
Sure.
we've been diving into and doing a lot of. Um, I'm starting to look at some more like Class A industrial deals and starting to see some more like small bay industrial deals as well.
What's a day in your life like from start to end?
Sure. Like from the time I wake up to the time I sort
Well,
of,
time to get into
the
office,
time
whenever
I
you
get,
start working.
yeah. So I start working around 9:15 usually. Um, and I have like a organized to-do list that I generate from the night before. So I usually just go straight down my to-do list, and very often it's consisting of scheduling. Like if I have a meeting that's like in flux and is not scheduled, I have like on like a Word doc that's forever flowing, like 10 10 things under my scheduling section. It's saying, all right, schedule a meeting with this person, schedule a call with this person, and schedule a site visit for this deal, and so forth. That's like usually phase one of my day is organizing, the week going forward. Uh, second second phase of my day is I have a section on that same Word doc where it says review. I get underwritings turned to me all the time, and I need to review the deals that were, sent over. So I need to go through all those deals. From there on, I'm usually quoting those deals, and if the quotes get traction, I'm, taking them through credit for a term sheet or for approvals. Um, and I'd say usually by the time I did those two things, it's around 10:30, 10:45. At that point, I'm getting to the office roughly. Most of my day starts in the car at 9. I have a long commute. I live in Deal, New Jersey. It's about an hour and 25 minutes, hour and 30 away from the city. So I start my day in the car doing that, and I'm able to, work on the road. Um, I usually head out of the office around 6 o'clock, have dinner for, an hour or two with the wife, and then I usually hit the computer from like 10 p.m. to, well, and a lot of people know this, to like 1 a.m., every single night. So a lot of my calls are still going at like 12:30 in the morning. So it's a long day with a lot of different breaks. It sort of just flows into the next.
Yeah, you just work as much as you can when you can and just ever going. There's no
Exactly. Yeah.
set start, no set end. It's always
Exactly. Yeah. I work out for 30 minutes in the morning. I have breakfast with my kids for it's a long breakfast. That's when I get to spend time with them. I have an hour plus breakfast with them and we all hang out. I head out a little bit late to miss the traffic. Fortunate enough to have someone that, helps me get in so that I'm able to, do my job. And that's that's pretty much it. Just flows into the next, trying to get as much work in as I could. I'm probably not working, if I'm sleeping for, 6.5 to 7 hours, I have about 3 hours of non-work a day.
And when you do deal with borrowers, right, on the transitional basis, like you close a deal with them, how do you maintain those relationships when they're not on the active market?
Sure. I think if you deliver for them, the relationship usually is maintained. But I'd say is, it's constant follow-up, just touching base with them, see what they're seeing in the market, ask them what they're seeing in the market. But I always, I think for when you're in the construction space, you're fortunate in that there's always draws. So I look at the construction lending business as it's more like a marriage than a date because you're really, well, a short marriage, not a long marriage. You're in these deals for 2+ years very often. So there's constant contact because, there's construction draws. So there's really always follow up and touching base. Hey, how'd the last draw go? I saw the pictures. Looks like you're doing great. And I think there's natural follow up there. But I always say, like, if you deliver for a client, like, they're gonna probably come back to you, and, we really try and provide really great service there. I mean, I had a deal yesterday, which was supposed to be and I'm not gonna give any names, but if you're listening to this, you know who you are. It was supposed to be a TOE for it was either today or Friday, and I got a text at 7:30 in the morning, "Steven, you are going to kill me. The TOE is actually today. I made a mistake." It was actually, it was a 10:31, and you had to close by a certain date.
Wow.
And he got the day wrong by, like, a day or 2, and it was 7:30 in the morning. I'm just like, "Okay," and he's, like, calling me 5 times. I'm like, "Stop calling." I didn't say, "Stop calling me." I'm thinking, like, "Don't call me. Let me call everyone that needs to get called to actually get the deal closed." So, reach out to legal, reach out to the closers and everything, and we actually ended up closing it in time. But I think,
Wow.
yeah, doing stuff like that and just telling, we had to rejiggle our closing schedules to make sure that this one closes for him. So I think doing the stuff like that, accommodating people's requests if you can, of course, um, helps maintain relationships.
Yeah, I mean, you do something like that, prove yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he would have had a nice $800,000 tax bill. Yeah.
That would not be nice.
No.
In general, all the deals you worked with, is there anyone that stands out, particular it was really hard and you were able to get it done?
A deal that was really hard and we were able to get it done. Yeah, there was a few. We recently did a large deal in Astoria. It was a $300 million loan. Um, and I think the challenges there were that the deal was essentially like on an island. And I think there was a little nuances to understanding what the rents would be there. So we really had to, I walked myself, the entire comp set. I walked probably 7 buildings. So that was like one, I think, tough thing to get around on the deal. In addition to that, it was a JV. There were like very, very tight, timelines that were starting to kick out. And I'd say that it was a deal that had a lot of pressure behind it. And, fortunately, we were able to, close that deal out. And I think the borrowers were happy, but it was definitely a challenging transaction to get closed because it was big. It was like a very large redevelopment plan, and there was a lot of nuances to certain things that they had to complete in order for the approvals to stay good. So, a lot of timelines, a lot of nuances with the actual asset and stuff.
So when you're dealing with like timelines and stress and pressure, like how do you deal with all that at once with these huge transactions?
Sure. I constantly remind myself that we're in business because people have timelines, right? Like if people had all the time in the world to close, they're probably not, going the debt fund route very often. So constantly reminding myself is like, this is why we're here. So like, just stay calm. Like this is our business. Um, but you got to stay organized and you need to have a dedicated team towards every single aspect of a deal. And you kind of have to stay on top of everything to make sure that things are getting done in a timely fashion. For example, we're vertically integrated. So we're originating and structuring these deals in house. We're servicing our loans in house. We're managing construction in house. Everything is done under our roof. So because of that, it allows everyone to stay in their lane and focus on what they do best. So for me, that's structuring deals. I'm not doing the budget review, but the guy that does the budget review, sits, a couple offices down from me. So I think having a dedicated team for each aspect of a deal, enables us to close a lot of these deals in time crunches because we can manage the timeline a bit better.
Yeah, you guys rely on yourselves opposed to.
Correct. When you're relying solely on third parties, it's very challenging to make decisions when you're waiting for someone else to get back to you.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at a $300 million deal and when you look at a $10 million deal, are you looking at them differently or is it the same structure that you told us earlier?
the larger deals and the smaller deals by us at least are structured a bit differently. On the smaller deals, we might have some more flexibility on the capital stack and sequence of funding, and so forth. I think on the larger deals, it's a bit more of a traditional structure where like all equity always is typically going first, loan comes second, or some sort of like sequencing. But I think a deal's a deal. You got to understand the sort of the crux of it. But I think they are a bit different. Sometimes as you go larger, they are a bit more complex sometimes.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And then you mentioned you guys are a debt fund and you guys are based on timing. But what makes you guys also different from a traditional lender like a bank or something like that?
Yeah. So I think first of all, banks are usually obviously it depends on the deal and the people are giving deposits to the bank because they might get a bit more aggressive. But I say generally, when working in the debt fund world, it helps reduce the equity check a bit. So if you have a $10 million deal, a debt fund could be somewhere around $7.5 million. So that's an equity check of 2.5, whereas a bank might be, I don't know, $6 million or $6.5 million. So that's number one. I think very often it's leverage driven. I think two is that it's a bit more difficult to deal with the banks on the construction draws. I think they take a bit longer to fund the draws, whereas I think guys who are managing the construction in house and not really relying on a third party, they could get the draws out a lot faster. I know for some of these small deals under 20 million bucks, these draws are going out in 3 to 5 days, so
Yeah.
it's an unbelievably quick turn, and that helps the developer get in and out of our deal really fast. And I think we offer a lot of flexibility and, especially on the deals that are under 20 million bucks, like when the sponsor's equity is funded. Banks might take a full boat interest reserve. We could allow some current pay, some reserve or sometimes all current pay, depending on the sponsor's financials. I think we could get a bit more flexible on contingency, a bit more flexible, definitely more flexible on like buyout requirements, right? Like buying out the trades. Um, I think it's just a more flexible loan with a lot less red tape. And I think the quickness in that we're funding the draws really helps alleviate some of the higher cost of capital. And yeah, that's I think
For the people that don't know about construction too much, can you talk about more like what draws are, interest reserve, that sort of part of the capital stack?
absolutely. So you start off with a piece of land, right? Like that piece of land is not worth what my loan amount is typically. So let's say I'm giving a $10 million loan to be, for I don't know, 40 apartments. So if that's the case, I can't give the $10 million all at once on the land because that guy could just, go to Vegas and he'll be okay. Of course, there's guarantees and stuff, but you got the gist there. So we're giving the money out in draws, usually after work is done. So for example, you have a loan closing, the land was delivered free and clear. Let's say we fund closing costs. The next draw might be the sponsor, completed his foundation. He needs $500,000 bucks. We go out there, make sure the foundation is done. We run title to make sure that no liens were placed on the property between each draw. And then we fund for the foundation. So it's a gradual funding. It's a gradual funding. It's not, all at once, which is also why I think even though our interest rates might be a bit more expensive than a bank, because you're not charged on the entire commitment at closing, it helps balance that out a little bit because, if you thought that our rate was, I don't know, 3% more than a bank, on the total loan is really like, 1.5% more. So it helps narrow that gap down a bit.
And then you get less red tape and you get a quicker funding and a quicker closing time frame with
Correct, and you get
time.
some more money, Equity is expensive, right? If you have to raise equity and give away, more of your deal, you have a lot less money on the back end. So sometimes it makes a lot more sense to take, a bit higher debt.
For sure. And then kind of transitioning to like younger brokers and, team
Sure.
members at S3, what are you looking for when you are looking for a new talent to join the company?
Absolutely. So it depends for the role, right? Like I think on the analyst side, we're looking for guys that it's very often trained from the ground up on the analyst side. So a lot of these kids are coming out of college and they're getting trained how to look at a deal, how to model them, how to understand a comp set, how to understand like a market dynamic, especially as we're expanding geographically. Very often before I'll even have anyone like underwrite the deal, I get a deal in like a market which we're not familiar with. Um, I'll ask for like a market overview to get an understanding of like who are the renters here, why are they living here, who are the employers, um, what a single family home sell for, what a townhome sell for. Like you want to understand the dynamic of that market. And we're looking for guys that could, analyze the market and give an opinion if they think that, you know, a deal there makes sense. And then from there, we want to have them model it out. So we're looking at their Excel skills, of course. Um, and we're looking at work ethic. We want people that are, hungry and that, want to work hard and they're going to put in the hours to grow. So that's, I'd say, for like a entry level like position. And then I think as you're hiring more like senior level guys, it depends, of course, on the job function, but we're looking for people that we could trust in giving like responsibility and people that are like super organizing and stay on top of a deal to ensure that it closes in a timely fashion.
Sure. So different roles have different positions and things like that.
Correct. Yeah. If you're looking for someone on the production side of the business, originations,
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to look for guys that could really break down a deal, understand the sources and uses, help work down a sponsor's equity check, twin a loan at a bit less leverage. Um, I think every role we're looking for different things, but I think the common denominator is, it's just always hard work, people willing to put into time and, people that just good people who we like because we spend a lot of time, in the office and on the phone with, the team. So
Do you like guys? I know people that come straight out of college, but what about other people with experience? Are those harder to transition because they learned something else from somewhere else?
I think it's yeah, I think it's always easier for, I think it's always easier for people to start from the ground up. I mean, I've been, with S3 for, maybe going on like 10 years.
Well,
So for me, I always feel that's the easiest way just because it's not that you understand the culture, it's that you become the culture,
yeah,
right? Like, I've been working with some of the same guys for almost a decade. Like, we know what we're gonna say before we say it. Like, someone will ask a question and like we're all thinking the same answer at the same time. So it creates a team dynamic. I think that's very seamless, and that's it's really easy. Like right, but I think we could also give our perspective to someone that has a lot of experience, and they'll give their perspective, and I also think that's good too.
sure.
So I guess it's a mix, but yeah, I think training guys from the ground up is always great because they get your business from soup to nuts.
Yeah, from the beginning, that's the
From the
only thing they
beginning.
know.
Yeah, and we have a lot of guys like that. I mean, now that I'm thinking about we have a lot of people that have been in our team for north of 5 years.
So people stick.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Do you guys feel like you do anything outside of work, or do you guys do anything outside of work to like build team culture? And is that important to you guys?
Yeah, definitely. We have like a soccer league. I don't play in it, but a bunch of the guys do. I always ask what the score was and who scored.
Yeah,
It's always the same 2 scorers. We have a soccer league. Thursday nights very often everyone, heads downstairs and goes for drinks. Um But I'd say a lot of the fun happens in the office also. Like, we have fun doing what we do. Like, we like to do deals and talk about them, and, like, last night or 2 nights ago, someone on the team called me. It was, like, an 11 p.m. call, and I was already, like, on the computer. He was also on the computer, and he's like, "Hi, calling you quick on this deal. Got a second?" "Sure." And,
nice.
like, yeah, we're just, like we like doing good deals and transacting with great people, so for us, it's fun. Like, I don't think of it as work.
Yeah, do you think that to be really successful in this business or in any business, you have to not think of work as a separate thing, or kind of hard to structure that?
I think everyone's different. Everyone has a different relationship with what they do,
Yeah,
right? What I really like about the lending side of the business is that it's very transactional. Like we're constantly doing deals, so it's not like I'm on the development side of the business and I'm living and breathing the same development for 3, 4 years, or maybe if it's in planning, could be longer. For us, we're doing multiple deals a month, so it's fun and you learn a lot and see a lot of things. But, I think everyone has a different relationship with their work. It definitely makes it easier if you like what you do because if you're gonna be good, you're gonna have to put in the time, and you might as well put in the time to something that enjoy rather than, you know,
that's for
looking
sure.
at yeah, you don't wanna be looking at the clock all day.
That's for sure. I was gonna ask you something. I forgot. Okay, what makes a good leader and what makes a great leader in your opinion? A great lender.
What makes a good lender and what makes a great what makes a good lender versus, like, a great lender
Yeah,
or okay, so good question. I think the key is understanding what the borrower wants. Like, like you're getting on the phone with someone, they sent you over a deal before, you even start talking about the deal. I think the goal of, at least for me, the goal of the call is to understand like what is this borrower trying to achieve? Or if I'm speaking to like a broker, what's this broker trying to achieve? Is it like they're trying to reduce their equity check? Is it they're trying to get the tightest spread possible? Are they looking for a very quick execution? Like I think, you got to know what they want to start the call. Very often, guys will just get on the phone and start shooting off stuff. But, like, you haven't heard what the other person wants. Like, what do they need? Key is understanding what people want. Listen, like, you got to listen. That's number one. And I think from there, it's, being strategic about how you're going to approach what they need. If they're trying to reduce their equity check and you see that they have, a ton of fat in their capital stack, maybe you have a conversation around, all the fees in the deal that's inflating their check and stuff. So you really need to understand, what they're looking for in order to make them an offer which could be, attractive. And I think that's what makes a good lender, what makes someone great rather than good, I guess. And I think in addition to that, it's, execution, right? You got to be able to do what you say when you say it. And I think also being attentive after the deal closes, right? Being able to fund those draws quickly, not just trying to get something closed and then, drag along the rest of your processes once you have them in the door. Like you got to be able to be attentive, turn around those draws, get them in and out of their deal as quick as possible. So they could either sell their units and make some money or refi out into a cheap bank loan.
Yeah, for sure. Execution, post deal, and getting everything done. And then you guys do condo inventory loans, correct?
Yeah, we're doing everything.
Can you
We
walk us through a
transition them.
condo inventory loan and kind of why that's a need and how that works?
Sure. So I could give a live example. We recently closed. It was actually a mid construction deal in South Florida. It was in like Hollywood Beach, for reference, condos, and they had some sales, but they also had a bunch of units that were still open. So I think the need there was to give them a bit more term to finish the deal, to finish the job, a couple more dollars to fund a few bucks of overruns, and then to give them some runway to sell the rest of the units. Um, Condo market in a lot of markets, obviously it's like market by market, it's pretty fragmented, but could be a bit slower at times, especially when rates are high. So sometimes guys need a bit more time to sell the units for the price that they're looking for.
For sure. And then more back on the personal end, I guess we're transitioning. If you weren't a broker or a lender, what would you be?
If I wasn't, if I wasn't, you're saying if I was out of the real estate, if I was out of the real estate
Yeah, if you were
space
out
as
of
a
the real
whole,
estate space.
what would I be? I'd probably find some sort of business that made sense acquiring and acquire a bunch of them and then try and roll it up and sell it to private equity or something like that. Or I really like tennis. If I was good enough, I'd probably want to be a tennis player.
Have you been to the US Open this time?
I have not been to the US Open this year and I don't have plans to go this year, but hopefully next year.
Do you have a winner for the prediction for the winner?
No,
Fair.
no, I'll defer that to Max Rothman from our office for sure. Knows who the winner's going to be.
And then have you had any big mentors or like is there any piece of advice that you heard earlier on that you carried with you to now?
Yeah, I've had so two questions. Have I had any mentors, and was there any piece of advice that I carried along? So I've had like three mentors. I'd say one of them is my uncle. He got me into the real estate space. Always gives me time. He gave me a lot of time. So he's the reason why I'm in real estate. I'd say my second mentor is Sean Safety. He taught me the business from the ground up and how to sell. And my third is Matan Kerman, who really showed me how to structure deals and break down a capital stack and just understanding the nitty gritty when it comes to, transactions. So those are three mentors who I think, gave me a lot of guidance and direction always and give me constantly. Um, a piece of advice. Uh, let's come back to that one.
Fair.
Okay.
Okay. What motivates you?
I get really excited about growing the business, both, geographically and the amount of money that we have committed and outstanding. Um, I love breaking into new markets. Something that was very exciting for me while at S3 was, in 2019, we wanted to kind of go into like a new market within somewhere in the Southeast. And for me, South Florida made a lot of sense because my wife's family was originally from Mexico City, and they moved to South Florida when she was 5. So I was constantly always going to South Florida just to see family. So when we were talking about like markets to expand into, South Florida was, it just made sense. It was option one. I'm like, guys, I'm there anyway. Let's just really focus on this. So 2019, we made like a real push, gathered a lot of data, kind of made a list of like who are the active guys down there, all the brokers, and we spent like a lot of time just with an approach of how we're gonna like sort of tackle the market.
Yeah, how do you get into
Like,
like a market?
yeah, so you got it. It's a lot of deliberation, right? We need to, have to understand who are the players, like who are the developers, who are the brokers, what pockets are, do you feel are undersupplied, what pockets are oversupplied, and you also have to understand like what product does that market offer, like what's a $5 million loan in South Florida look like versus a $50 million loan in South Florida, because there are some markets where doing these small loans, you might not necessarily get the product type that you're looking for. I think like New York's a very unique market in that you could do a $5 million deal and having a multifamily building that's, main on main and prime, that's eventually like a very liquid asset. Like the middle market in New York Metro is incredible. But a lot of these other markets within the Southeast, these like more boutique multi buildings are a bit more rare. So you first have to understand like what's the product type there and understand like where things go off in terms of leverage and where things price and like where's the void in the market that you could fill. Right, and then from there, you gotta understand, like, different pockets and how those pockets are performing and who are the players in each pocket so that you could, efficiently put out the money. But this was kind of going back to 2019, and, of course, right after we come up with this entire plan to tackle the market, COVID hits, and
Yeah.
we all get on a call, man plans and God laughs. Now, the world kinda just stopped, and I remember we had a conversation, like, maybe we should stop with our, like, expansion plan because we were really starting to churn out deals and start looking at stuff, and after thinking about it, we all, sort of decided if we don't push into a new market right now, it's going to be significantly harder to break in when everyone's awake and lending. So because like everyone sort of pulled back and, wasn't doing business, that enabled us to jump into the market with little competition. And to me, that was like really exciting because, we signed up our first loan in, uh, in South Florida. We signed it up in either September or October of 2020. And I was actually in Florida at the time when we were negotiating the term sheet. I remember where I was sitting, and we were on a Zoom call all talking about the deal. And I just remember everyone saying, so this deal was in Oakland Park. It's actually called the Oakland. It's built now. We were paid off. It was an incredible loan. It's a two-phase project. We did the first phase. We gave them $67 million. We closed on the second phase. I think that was last year maybe. We gave them maybe 60 million bucks or something. And for me, it was just so exciting breaking into, a new market and, kind of expanding the business. So, that's something that keeps me going in business. Yeah.
Do you have to like cold call? Like, how do you like, I guess, get in front of these developers who are in a market that, you're just trying to get your foot into?
Yeah, sometimes if I see something I like, I'm gonna cold call it. Like if I see someone, filed plans on a site or gets onto my radar, I'm gonna pick up the phone and call them for sure. But not usually. Most of the deals are coming right now, most of the deals are coming through like a very large broker network and some direct relationships.
For sure. And then, how important is it to like, what could brokers or developers do more effectively to, work with you guys?
I think a lot of the times it's focus, right? Like there's so many great brokers out there, so many great lenders out there. But if neither party is giving each other the time of day and focus, things just don't get done. And the perfect example of that is we were seeing deals through a brokerage shop in South Florida for 3 or 4 years, and we've never hit on anything. We never term sheeted anything. We've we've had like zero traction. Is that because the deals didn't fit? Is that because we weren't getting the proper attention or we weren't giving them the proper attention? I don't know. But a few months ago, um, flew out to Florida with our team, and we met with these brokers for a coffee. And they said, "Oh, we have this deal coming down the pike it's a condo deal in Bay Harbor, and we think it could be a cool opportunity for you." And I remember I said, "Oh, just give me an early look. Send it to me. Send it to me now. Let me have a look at it." And they sent it to us. We sent a term sheet, and we closed that loan in 30 days last week.
The first
So
one after 4 years.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, just we went to coffee and something clicked, I guess. Now we're working on, 4 or 5 deals with them, so it's just attention.
How important is it, like, face-to-face coffee? Like, 'cause real estate, a lot is it over the phone, over the email. How important is it to get into someone's face and, like, introduce
Such
yourself?
such a good question, and I'm getting asked this question more and more. It's really important. I do a lot of Zoom calls, camera on, but there is something about a face-to-face meeting, sitting for lunch or sitting at a coffee shop that I think it definitely triggers some other stuff. It helps get the thoughts going and deals moving, and it's just nothing's like face-to-face. It creates a bond, right? I think it's really important, and I think, these days people aren't doing it enough.
Yeah, like, you email so much, you call so much, but, like, re
Email is completely ineffective.
yeah, to
You could
me
send out 500 emails and do whatever you need to you want me to speak from like to brokers or
to anyone, yeah.
anyone. So, like, a broker could send out 500 emails, get 40 or 50 responses, and the responses are, "Not interested," or "Take me off your list." Like, it's just not it's really not it's really ineffective. I think it's really important to, get somebody on the phone, get them to go for a cup of coffee, which is challenging, but the phone, if you can't get them to go for coffee, right? And just understand what they're looking for.
So you're not an email guy, unless, like, term sheets or
I'm an
things.
no, I'm an everything guy. I just I just think that when you're getting someone in person, it's significantly more, effective. You have, like, their attention. Like, you're sending someone an email, or even if you're on the phone with them, you really don't have their full you don't know if you have their full attention.
Yeah.
You're sitting with them for coffee, you could look them in the eye, you get the body language.
So for young originators, you think that's definitely, something they have to put on their list?
Oh, 100%.
And then what about networking events?
I think network events are great. Just I always ask, get the list in advance of the event so you know who's attending, and so you sort of have an idea of who you wanna, chat with. I think for me, I'm not the guy to walk into, like, a huge networking event and just speak to 700 people, 'cause I just feel like it's less effective. Like, I think it's important, to understand, like, who's going to the event, and is this event gonna be a good fit for me, or else, you spent, 3 hours and 6 drinks, talking to, guys who, stuff might not, you might not click with them on stuff.
But you do them when, you find the guest list is effective,
Yeah, I do a couple a year.
and then do you think social media is important in nowadays
Oh,
compared to
absolutely.
before?
Yeah, totally. I think social media, press releases and stuff is super important. I think it's a lot more effective than emailing people, because I think if you're, out of sight, you're out of mind, and these days it's very easy to be in sight. So you gotta take advantage of that.
And when you bring in young originators, well, not underwriters, but originators, you tell them to, like, go to events, to call, like, you guys, I guess, how does the ropes work?
Yeah, I always start with I like people to target. I like very focused approach. I just think that it works a bit better. Make a list of, a bunch of the shops who are, active in your market, of brokers, of developers, know who are the players, and then figure out the best ways to, get them on the phone and get in front of them.
Does each person have their own territory?
We don't really have such a system. Right now, we're not like an origination shop with, 10 originators.
Yeah.
It's, myself and Sean here in New York. We have Jonathan Hart in Dallas, Texas. We have an office there. We have a young originator out in Aventura, South Florida, who started with us very recently. So we don't really have, like, a dozen originators, all territories. I'd say it's very collaborative, very team oriented, um, and I'd say that it's not necessarily like territorial. It's more so, we want people to understand their territory and rule their territory, right? You want someone that, if you're boots on the ground in South Florida, you should know every active developer in the market. You should know every active broker in the market, right? If you're boots on the ground in Dallas, same thing for Texas. You should know all the active guys. That's the key.
How important is taking time to, like, just, like, do market study, like, find out who the banks are, who the clients are, kinda who the developers are in the market, who's building, who's not, things of that nature. Like, just market study.
You're saying how much?
How important is it?
Look, at the end of the day, we're selling a product, and you need to understand who the consumers are,
Yeah.
right? That's what it is. So I think I think that the business is understanding who's who and who's the right fit. If sometimes I'll get a deal and I'll look at the sponsorship and sometimes I'll just say like this guy is not going to borrow from me. Right? He's this for the last 40 years this guy's been a bank borrower, at 60% loan to cost. Maybe he takes some pref, maybe not. Like that's probably not the guy that's going to go to a debt fund, and if he is going to a debt fund, it's probably a rough deal, right? Because all his other options that he's been working with for the last 40 years said not for me. You need to understand who the guys are and sort of you know get a sense of who are the guys that will be a fit for your money. Um, and then I think the goal is to sort of speak with them and tell them like why your product is unique and how it's going to benefit them, and how they're going to save time and aggravation on when working with you rather than some of the guys out there who might have a bit of a different process.
And then you're a broker. I mean, you're a lender, yeah. And there's a few lenders in the area, and all around. So, is there any like not pressure, but like, you might not be the only one that they're speaking to. Like, how does that feel, and how does that work?
I think it's good. You want liquidity in a market. If you're the only player and someone needs to get out of your loan, you want to be stuck with them and married to them. It's nice. It's nice to have some competition that could refi you out, and you need liquidity. I think that's why you want to be in markets that are you know tier one. You want to be in A markets because liquidity is important. That's how you get out of these deals and put your money out on new assets.
Do you feel like Texas and Miami and New York are different or similar in any type of ways?
Great question. I think private money in New York go hand in hand. Guys are we had like probably like between 12 and 15 TOE deals, this summer. Right? That's TOE deals, hard money on the line, hard deposit money on the line. Like this is that is New York. So like New York needs debt fund money. Like there's always been a need for it. Like cuz it's such a liquid market for a buyer to be able to get a deal under wraps. They need to offer a tight timeline to close. They need to offer hard deposit money down very often. So like to get these good deals, like these guys have to take real risks in committing to them. And that's why I think that New York, you know, for many years has been a market that there was a real private money dominance. Um, I think Florida and Texas historically were were dominated by the local and regional banks, and I think that HVCRE definitely caused a lot of these banks to pull back. Keeping the banks had to keep more money on their balance sheets, but giving construction money required the banks to pass along those depository requirements to the sponsors. Also helped private money sort of break into some of those markets. But I think that's a bit newer. I don't think private money has has been flowing in New York and Florida as long as it's been in New York. I think that's a bit newer of a. I think it's a bit newer. I feel that's a bit newer of a progression.
And then do you feel like you have to explain it more to new borrowers, or they know what you guys do and how it's different than a bank?
It's interesting. When I get on the phone with like a younger sponsor, it might be in their mid late 30s or 40s. They understand like private money very well, and they've very often borrowed private and they get it. But I'm sometimes speaking to some of these sponsors who are been around for much longer. A lot of these guys were historic, especially in the southeast. I mean, like they don't understand the deaf fund world as much, and you really have to educate them on the process, the terms, the non-recourse carve outs, and like it's
It's a different,
it's
wow.
a different world to them. And sometimes I'll say like, so, how long do you guys need to close? And or, you'll get a question that's just so do you guys max out at, 60 LTC or something like that? And then you just like sort of have to remind yourself, that like, this guy's been borrowing from the same three banks for the last, you know, 15 years, 20 years. And it's definitely an educational process.
Yeah, okay. Do you have any piece of advice that you feel like you heard early on that you carry with you today?
Yes. So I'd say especially when I started out at S3, I'd get very stuck on like if I lost the deal, it'd bother me, or if deal closing was very very choppy and there was aggravation for whatever reason, it would really get to me and it'd really jam up my day. I'd have a hard time. I'd have a hard time focusing if I just lost a big deal. Like I wouldn't be able to move on with my day and get on to the next thing. Remember, I sat down with my time from our office. I'm just like, I'm just having such a hard time moving past like this deal that we just lost. And I remember he said to me, like when he was in the army, he was in the Israeli army, and he said to me, he was an Air Force pilot, and he said to me, "You have to, yeah, you always have to move on because crazy things are happening all the time, and you need to move on to the next task at hand, or else, you know, bad things could happen." And he goes, "It's the same thing. When something happens, you just got to go next, 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 and just you got to keep on moving." And that's something I tell myself daily because I get hit with a speed bump, every few hours. So you just have to move on to the next deal, move on to the next task, and problem solve.
Do you feel like earlier in your career when you did lose those big deals or deals that you really were invested in, it kinda stung?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
It's like you work so hard, you invest, you kinda picture that's gonna happen, then or have you had a deal that's, along the way, term sheet signed up and, something out of the world came like, something happened,
Yeah,
stung?
the guy sold the land or something. Yes,
Yeah.
all the time. Stuff happens all the time. Totally.
And then how do you had that quote, is there anything else you do that, you kinda refresh the day?
I just I just tell myself like it's just that's it. You got to move on to the next deal. And by the way, it works. Like I've been telling myself this for probably like 5 or 6 years, and I say it like all the time. All right, next, 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 and it helps. It now you don't feel it after a while. Like you actually don't like I don't like you lose a deal, you sign up a deal, you don't feel it. You're looking at like you're taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture. Like you're focusing on every single deal to make sure the deal is sound, the deal is safe, it's good, that everything's working out, the sponsor aligns, but you can't get so emotionally invested in
Just be like this. You
yeah,
can't get too high, too low.
never, never. When something closes, when something doesn't close, like you gotta just keep on going.
So when you do close, like, a huge loan, it's not like a huge rush of excitement?
I feel great when it's closed because I could call the broker or the borrower and, you know, take a week off from speaking with everyone. But, but no, no, it's just you gotta now the loan has to go well. Now we have to
Yeah.
manage the deal. So no.
And then how do you mentioned that you have speed bumps, like, every 2 or 3 hours, like, how do those affect your day, and, like, how do you keep staying focused when you got a huge, like, roll of bad news?
Absolutely. So that rolling word doc that I told you about,
Yeah.
that's it. It's a list of like 100 things that I need to get done, constantly getting updated. Like you gotta just stick to the routine. All right, that something happened, right? That means that something's off my list. Whether the deal went forward or back, I addressed that issue for the day. So I just crossed that off the list. So for me, it's really the process, right? It's all about the process. It's not about what happened. Did I sign up the deal? Did I not sign up the deal? Of course, that matters, and that's the key. But I'd say to be able to keep on moving, you have to be obsessed with your process. Not obsessed with the results. Like I'm obsessed with knocking off as many things on my to do as I could, and I even have little like notions for like if I address something but didn't get an answer yet or didn't fully knock it off the list. But let's say I sent an email following up on, you know, a deal or a question or whatnot. I might put a little X next to that on my to do list. And once that thing is solved, I'll switch that over to an O, and then, that next night when I'm up to that thing on the list, what am I going to do? I'm going to cross that off because I addressed it and move on. So for me, it's about the process.
And, a question I wanna end off on is, like, how important is it to be a self-starter in this business? For example, like, young brokers, young originators, no one tells them exactly what to do every second of the day. You kinda have to push yourself. So how important is that in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't. I say anyone who's on the production side of the business typically, is dictating a lot of what they're doing, their hours and stuff. And I think, of course you have to be a self-starter and you have to be motivated, right? If no one's lighting a fire under you, you have to be the one to do it. But I really think that the key is to just really stay. You got to be organized because it's so easy if you don't have an agenda for the day. It's so easy to get lost, doing stuff that's not necessarily, productive. You need to have like a daily agenda every single day, right? And I say this to everyone that you follow by. You live and die by that agenda. You need to make sure that that's updated for the next day. Like I'll sometimes I'll be up till 2 a.m. just because if I forgot to update this, this list, which is, the bane of my existence. I'll be up at 2 a.m. sitting here updating the list. And like my wife like walks out of the room like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, updating the agenda. Oh yeah.
Like, this
Like,
agenda is the key.
yeah, it's the key because you have to you need to be able to wake up and jump right into what you need to accomplish for the day. Like if you're able to accomplish your goals that you set out, whether it's 5 goals, 10 goals, 15 goals, like I don't know how time consuming each one is, right? If you're able to accomplish that, you did something. You knocked something off the list. You got to chip away at that iceberg.
So, like, the small wins matter. Because each one of those knocking those off is a small
That's
win.
it. Yeah, those are the wins. It's not necessarily the deal. It's like if you're consistent in your process and you have some luck, I really believe, and help of God, I really believe that you'll become, you'll do well and succeed.
That's awesome. Steve,
Yeah.
thanks so much for joining us. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
of
it.
course. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
Good.